Now tell me, if there were a way for you to get 67% more leads than you do today, would you try it? Or what about if somebody told you you can increase your local online presence by 97%? Would you maybe pay attention? Now, what if you did some work and Google loved you 434% more than they do today? Do I have your attention now? And what I'm talking about is blogging. And I'm not talking about blogging for affiliate marketing. I'm not talking about that whatsoever. What I'm talking about is blogging as a business owner or as a sales agent. So sales agents like realtors, mortgage brokers, financial advisors. Blogging is absolutely not dead for 2024, probably not for a little while longer. And it's a great way for you to develop your online presence, develop authority in your local community, and be known as an expert even while you sleep. Because leads automatically find blogs when they're searching for information. So in this video, we're going to jump into kind of the benefits of blogging as a business owner and a sales agent. And we're also going to kind of briefly explore some of the ways that you could start a strategy today as well. So let's jump in and look at all of the reasons why you might want to implement a blogging strategy, only if you want more leads though, and only if you want to be known more locally as well. I'm only asking for the viewers who want that. So if that's you, let's jump in. And hey, my name is Helena. And after a career of 30 years in finance with self-employment and marketing in my background as well, I now help sales agents to optimize their business and to develop an online presence that is strong, that attracts leads. So let's jump in and explore all of the benefits of you developing a blogging strategy as part of your overall marketing strategy as well. Now, before we start, I'm going to kind of be very transparent and say that blogging is a strategy that requires work. It really does require work. But so does door knocking, and so does cold calling, and so does networking. But the good thing about blogging is that it works for you 24/7, even when you're sleeping. So yes, it is going to be work to develop blogs, or it's going to cost you money if you want to hire somebody to do it. But bottom line is, blogging can really boost your business penetration locally. And the other thing about blogging is that it's not an instant thing. Blogging really is a 6 to 12 month strategy. So if I post something in January, expect maybe June, maybe by year end, it would be then optimizing for you and working for you. But understand, everything in regards to building a business can take time if you really want to do it well. And I often get these phone calls of, well, I want my website to be seen everywhere locally. I want to own my area and I want to own it now. And I want to throw money at it and I don't care. And I want a website that just constantly is working for me. Well, yeah, great. We can do that. Absolutely. However, it's going to take time. And I always want to set that expectation with my clients. Yes, there are certain things we can do to kind of fill the gap until your blogging strategy does become effective. And often those are things like Facebook ads, Instagram ads, it could be Google ads, it could be any kind of ad, and you're throwing money at it in the interim. Whereas the longer term strategy of blog building does require less kind of finances in the long run, but can provide a longer term benefit overall. So there definitely is huge benefits by implementing it, but you can use it as an interim strategy using ads for the short term until your website really starts crawling and getting out there and being known. So blogging is definitely part of what's called an SEO or search engine optimization strategy. So let's kind of look at what a website really does and what blogging can do for you then, using the analogy of a net, okay? So right now, if you have like an IDX website that has MLS listings that are showing everyone else's house listings except for showcasing you and your brand, you have what I would deem as a long rope, and you're just throwing that really long rope into the water. And that rope is really not catching anything. It's not reeling anything in. It's just kind of hitting the water and then you pull it back. And it's hitting the water and you pull it back. And that's really, when you don't have an optimized website, what your website is doing. But as you build out content on your website and you develop copy, and copy is just the writing that's on your website. It's a fancy word for what you represent and what you post on your website. So as your copy develops a strategy of talking about an area, talking about certain client base, etc., it starts to kind of take that rope and tie knots in it once in a while, okay? And maybe one end of the rope gets tied into another part of the rope, etc. So now you kind of have this rope that is kind of a little bit more broad. It has a little bit more kind of space. You know, it allows you to be able to throw it out there, and maybe now you're catching some seaweed, okay, with that rope, because there just is more rope hitting the surface of the ocean. And the ocean meaning, you know, let's take Google. The ocean is Google, okay? So now you have a slightly wider base hitting Google. So when you have a blogging strategy, this is actually when you take that rope and you start really tying it up, and it's intertwined with each other. And now you're even finding smaller ropes to tie inside of it. And now you have what's called a net. And a net really allows you to throw it out there into the Google Ocean and be able to potentially catch more things in it. And these things, those are leads, basically. These are the people who are going out there and searching certain terms that would lead back to you. And what those certain terms are, one is keywords, and there's broad keywords. So a broad keyword, if you think about it, is like real estate or mortgage or investment. That's a very broad word. It doesn't really say what it does, who it helps, and how you use it. Whereas then you have something what's called a long tail keyword. And a long tail keyword is often what clients or leads are looking up online. And that could be, what is the best mortgage term for a first-time homebuyer? Or real estate agent in Toronto. That is still very broad, I will say, because there's a lot of real estate agents in Toronto. But you can understand it's gone from real estate to real estate agent Toronto. It's a little bit more defined. It's starting to bring that net in a little further. And a part of your blogging strategy, you can actually look for things that will allow you to even more fine-tune that search, and even crawl on the internet for terms that maybe aren't searched so often. So if you take something like real estate's a very broad word. To own that word, you're throwing millions of dollars in ads at it, or you've had a domain or a website that has lived a long time and is very well known and has developed what's called domain authority. And what domain authority is basically a score that Google has kind of given you and saying that this is an expert and they are known for this. So being able to rank for something very broad is very, very difficult. Whereas if you start searching for more odd or different types of terms, maybe there's not so much search traffic to those terms, but it allows you to get kind of hits on your website and be known for those types of hits on a website. So what I mean basically is finding a term that perhaps doesn't have a lot of competition. Part of the strategy I do with my clients is I develop topical maps with them, and that is kind of casting that big net. And then we also look at the blogging strategy, which is kind of those silk threads interwoven through that web as well. So that is where we start looking at developing a domain score for them and developing some domain authority. And it does take time, but when you start blogging for some of those lower searched but odder terms, it starts to really build up your authority. So then eventually you can start trending for some of those bigger terms over a period of time. It isn't, again, instant, but you will be able to, over time, be known for a little bit more. And what I mean by that is, if I looked up a term, and I have looked this up, that's why I know about it, buying a second property in Ontario, and I happen to be in Ontario, that's why I looked it up. And buying a second property in Ontario is not the most searched term, but it's a very specific term. And that's going back to kind of, again, an ideal client strategy as well. And it is a term that's searched enough that it actually has a difficulty score. And its difficulty score is very low. So meaning if you wrote a blog on buying a second property in Ontario, but you were an Ontario agent, then you probably would be able to start ranking on that in a few months. So there are ways for you to start developing domain authority right now by just implementing a blogging strategy and updating the copywriting on your website. Now, you may be asking right now, does a website matter? Does it matter what kind of website I'm on? And I will say yes. I'm going to come out and say it. I have looked at so many realtors and mortgage brokers' websites, and it's always kind of these packaged and templated IDX type of websites or a website in a box type of thing. It says it's branded, or they tried to market it as being a branded website, but really they just changed your picture and your name. And if you looked up somebody else who had the same type of website, they probably even have the same kind of colors as you, but maybe they're found locally, in another area. But basically, those types of websites aren't the best. They can still work, but you're better off to be able to develop a fully branded website if you really want to take care and control your online presence and to develop some local authority and local presence as well, and really start owning that online space locally. So if you are looking at developing a much broader marketing strategy, I honestly would start with your website first, start with a blogging strategy, and then when you have something you are absolutely proud of, really start working on that social media. And then in between that time, absolutely do that door knocking, absolutely do those networking, absolutely do all of those like lead generation things that require you to be out and about. Working both avenues is a really great way for you to get leads and then have something that you are proud of to show, that shows that you are a professional, that you mean business, that you mean to be here for a long time and aren't going to be here today and then gone tomorrow. So start with a website, brand it, and then develop a blogging strategy around it. So how do you then develop your blogs? And blogging websites can be, and branded websites can be on WordPress, they can be on Squarespace, they can be on Wix, they can be on Hostinger. There's all kinds of websites out there, and even ones that have website builders with AI as well. And would I recommend one over another? Yes, there are certain things that I would recommend one over another. WordPress is a very robust way to build your website. It's highly, highly flexible, but it does require you to either have expertise or the money to keep it up. And personally, I'm not the biggest fan of WordPress, only because I've had a compromise of my own website. I learned the hard way. So myself, when I'm starting out somebody, I usually don't put them with a WordPress site unless they do have somebody that can help them along the way with updating and optimizing it and making sure it is secure. Some of my preferences are actually to start somebody out on a Squarespace site. And Squarespace has come a long way. They've recently bought Google domains and they integrate with a Google Workspace extremely well as well. So usually I work with a Squarespace site for most of my clients because it is so user-friendly and it's very quick to update, and all of the back security stuff is taken care of by Squarespace. I do love Squarespace because it allows me to sleep at night knowing that I have security built in to my website. I don't need to worry as much. Now, I still do safeguard my things, don't get me wrong. However, I prefer Squarespace myself after test driving 1,000,001 different types of websites out there. I really love the Squarespace kind of setup. And no, I am not sponsored whatsoever. I'm not sponsored. But Squarespace, if you'd like to sponsor me, hey, I'm all ears. Feel free to reach out anytime. But yes, when I am doing web design with my clients, if they really want a WordPress website, I will absolutely help them with that. But usually I try to kind of position a Squarespace site because it is so aesthetically beautiful and super easy to use. And the blogging strategy, no matter what anyone says, it absolutely still works there as much as it does on WordPress. There are creators, and I think Paige Brunton might be one. She actually teaches, people how to become web designers. And she did tests of Squarespace versus WordPress back to back on the exact same format, her own website. And she did talk about how she had the same type of kind of activity and analytics on Squarespace as she did on WordPress, and actually went from Squarespace to WordPress and then back to Squarespace. All right, so you've got a topical map. You've got your kind of blogging strategy put into place. You have your ideal client. You have kind of your articles. You want to make sure your articles are at least 1,200 words long, if not longer. Ideally 1,200 to 2,000, that's kind of a sweet spot. Now, there are some reasons to go a little bit shorter than 1,200, and that is in future videos, but basically SGE, or Google's Search Generative Experience. So if Google's SGE does roll out, that might be a different strategy that ends up taking off, where that shorter kind of verbiage will work better. So yes, right now you definitely want to be looking at a little bit longer, but you can, if you were talking about something very local, like a fair or kind of a business that you work with, you can put in shorter snippets on those ones. But for the most part, when you're trying to offer value to your clients or your leads, you want something a little bit longer that Google is going to say this person is absolutely the expert. So a little bit longer, and then just shorter snippets for kind of locally developed kind of information. And ideally, you're going to want to try to blog at least one blog a week, if not one every 2 weeks. But the more you blog, the more info there is for search engines to find you and to push your information out there. So ideally, you want to try for one a week. That's the kind of the sweet spot when you're really starting out. And the more and more you write, the more and more you're going to be able to broaden those keywords. So you're going to be able to then start looking at some of those harder to focus on keywords along the way. The more blogs you have on your website, the more information there are, the more authority you develop, the more expertise you are known for, then it will allow you to start trending for some of those tougher keywords that are very, very competitive. Now, the last part of a blogging strategy I highly, highly recommend would be to add your videos in there, to make sure that if you are producing short form or long form, ideally long form because it is evergreen, to add those into your blogs. And what I do is often either write a blog and then develop a video, or develop a video and then write a blog. And that way then they integrate beautifully together. It allows you to be seen. And the way that Google is starting to position everything is video is crawling up as the preferred position of what they want to position. So if your blog has also video on it, it might be a really great way for you to kind of be pushed forward even very early on in your blogging strategy. And if you are getting any kind of value out of this, please feel free to reach down and subscribe or like or comment, whatever the case may be. Now, if you do need help with your marketing strategy, I have left my booking link there with Calendly. You can book directly in my calendar if you were looking at developing a blogging strategy or needed help with a marketing strategy. By all means, reach out. And if not, then feel free to watch the next video. It is just about to come up on the screen of what Google thinks that you should watch next. And with that, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for staying tuned. I really appreciate you. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.